السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين وبعد. Alhamdulillah, we'll be going over the second passage of Surah Al-Burooj, and we'll be finishing it inshallah next week if we meet next week again. Again, previously we started off the surah, we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by the sky, the stars, and the bodies that are in it, by His creation again. And He swears that قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ, that the people of the trench were cursed. And we talked about the hadith, the long hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about the boy and the king, which specifically gave a story of that kind of references what is being discussed in this surah as well. And we have other narrations from other Sahaba, from the other companions, that it may have been other instances in history as well. But again, why were the Ashab al-Ukhdud cursed? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say, قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ النَّارِ ذَاتِ الْوَقُودِ إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ. It's obvious that they were cursed because they were punishing or they were torturing people because they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the obvious thing, right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't mention that right after He says قُتِلَ أَصْحَابُ الْأُخْدُودِ. He mentions that before. But after He mentions that they were cursed, He mentions a different aspect of also why they were cursed, right? إِذْ هُمْ عَلَيْهَا قُعُودٌ, since they were sitting, or when they were sitting near what was happening. And this is again the plural, so this is referring to not just the king, but the people that were with him and the people that were on his side, that they were sitting, وَهُمْ عَلَى مَا يَفْعَلُونَ بِالْمُؤْمِنِينَ شُهُودٌ, and they were to what was happening to the believers witnesses, meaning they were sitting there and watching what was going on. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also criticized them and mentioned that they're cursed, meaning they're doomed. They're obviously doomed, meaning here they'll be punished by the hellfire. That's because they sat quietly and did nothing while the believers were being persecuted. So this in and of itself was also something which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala criticized those people for. And also again, the general lesson here is for everyone, right? The general lesson here is for everyone. So when people are being tortured or they're being persecuted, and when people have the ability to do something about it and they don't, this is also an evil deed. And when people have the ability to speak up and they don't, this is also something evil. And when people don't even recognize it as something evil in and of itself, that is also something that is bad. And that's why we have the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which clarifies this aspect for us, in which he said, مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا فَلْيُغَيِّرْهُ بِيَدِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِلِسَانِهِ فَإِنْ لَمْ يَسْتَطِعْ فَبِقَلْبِهِ وَذَلِكَ أَضْعَفُ الْإِيمَانِ. وَكَمَا قَالَ صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said that whoever of you sees something evil, something bad, then he should change it with his hands. And if he cannot do that, then he should change it with his tongue, meaning speak out against it. And if he cannot do that, then he should change it with his heart. So what does it mean, change it with his heart? It means, the scholars say, his heart should at least change, right? That this thing, whatever he's seeing, his heart should not remain in the same state as it was in before he saw that evil, meaning he should recognize that thing as evil. And the scholars, they have gone on to use this hadith to explain it in many, many ways, amongst the foremost of which is, again, when do you change something evil with your hand? When do you change something evil with your tongue? And so they say that when you are in a position of authority, or you're given authority over something, and you have the ability now to make a change. And when you see something evil in that area of authority, you should make a change if you see something bad. So when we talk about parents in the house, they have the authority over the people of their house, right? Not just their kids, but anybody who's inside their house. They have the authority over their house. That is something that they are responsible for. You talk about leaders of the community, you talk about a governor, you talk about maybe an officer of the law, and so on and so forth. Anyone that has a position of authority, they have that right or that ability to change those things with their hands, then they should obviously do so. People that don't have that position or authority, they still have the ability to change or speak out against an evil when it's being done. So even though you cannot directly change it, you can still speak out against it. And we know that there have been so many instances in history where people have been persecuted. They haven't been able to change the rules or the laws or so on and so forth. But the power of words is something that is shown to be very, very strong. Words in and of themselves can rally people. Words can encourage people in power to change, or words can also force them to change, right? So the words in and of themselves have power as well. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, but if you can't do that, meaning even if you speak out, there's a fear that you will be persecuted. If you speak out, there's a fear that your life is in danger, that somebody else might be harmed because of you, or so on and so forth. Or if you're not capable of properly speaking out. Right? So the scholars also mentioned that, the ayah in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'idati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." That when you call to the way of Allah, you do so with wisdom, you do so with good instruction, and you even argue or discuss things in a way that is better than the way other people are arguing with you. Right? You go beyond what other people are treating you. You treat them in a better way, even when you argue with them. So the scholars, they said, you also have to be able to give that instruction or address that evil in a way that people are likely, not again the results are in the hands of Allah and some people will not change, but that people would be likely to listen to what you're saying. Right? They would be likely to conform to what you're saying. And we know that this involves being exposed to people, getting to know how people work, having experience with them, knowing the person or knowing the people that you're giving instruction to, so on and so forth. But there are many ways to get that to that level, but you should be able to say something in a way that it will have an impact. Not just say it and create more problems, but say it in a way that has an impact. So either you can't say something because you're threatened, or you can't say something because you don't know how to say it. You should at least, at the very least, you should feel that this whatever is happening is still evil in your heart. And if you can't do that, the Prophet ﷺ said, that is the weakest of faith. And so the scholars say there's nothing weaker than this. There's nothing weaker than this, and so therefore, this has to be the very least case of the believer, that whenever they see evil, they should at least detest it in their hearts and not like what they are seeing. Right after this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وَمَا نَقَمُوا مِنْهُمْ إِلَّا أَن يُؤْمِنُوا بِاللَّهِ الْعَزِيزِ الْحَمِيدِ الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ شَهِيدٌ. The rough translation, and they resented them not, or they didn't hate them for any other reason, except because they believed in Allah, the exalted in might, Al-Aziz, Al-Hamid, the one who is praiseworthy, praised over and over again, praised because of who He is. Whether or not people praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah Azza wa Jal, to Him belongs all praise. That is the word Al-Hamid. And to whom belongs the dominion or the kingdom of the heavens and the earth, and Allah over all things is witness. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that they are torturing them because they believe in Allah, and then He goes into detail describing His own qualities and attributes. Describing His own qualities and attributes, and how can you possibly torture people or oppress people or be against people who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and these are His qualities, right? So He mentions certain traits here. He mentions that He is Al-Aziz. Al-Aziz meaning He has might. He is, number one, either in the context of this verse, that He is capable of punishing the oppressors in this life and both in the next. It's almost like a threat. But it's also a testament to the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the world around you. The only one that could have made this is somebody that has extreme amounts of power, extreme amounts of might, right? This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Aziz. And because He is the one that is able to do all of this, He is Hamid. He is praised. Regardless of whether or not people accept it or not, regardless of whether or not people praise Allah or not, He is deserving of praise. He is praised because of who He is. He's perfect in all of His qualities. الَّذِي لَهُ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. The one to whom belongs everything that is in the heavens and the earth. And subhanAllah, this is again the power of how Allah Azza wa Jalla is describing Himself. Right? You are torturing a people who are believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, yet all of you are creations of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He owns the heavens and the earth, that means that we as individuals should only deal with the things in this world as the owner of the heavens and the earth has dictated they should be dealt with. So whether it's people, whether it's worship, whether it's economics, whether it's how we deal with other people, so on and so forth, whether it's finance, every single thing should be dealt with according to how the owner of the heavens and the earth, the one who all of this belongs to, wants us to deal with them. So this is also a threat to the oppressors. That how dare you oppress people? This is not how Allah Azza wa Jal has decreed that people should be treated, especially those who believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and only especially because they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so, how can you do this when Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one that owns everything in the heavens and the earth, and therefore He should be the one to dictate how everything is dealt with. Wallahu ala kulli shay'in shaheed, and Allah is a witness over every single thing. Meaning whatever happens, whatever oppression takes place, whatever is inside your hearts, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows all of this. Right? And so He lists certain of His qualities, again to remind them that this is who they are worshipping, and this is who you are preventing people from. And then He mentions the punishment of those oppressors, and He says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ فَتَنُوا الْمُؤْمِنِينَ وَالْمُؤْمِنَاتِ ثُمَّ لَمْ يَتُوبُوا فَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ جَهَنَّمَ وَلَهُمْ عَذَابُ الْحَرِيقِ. That indeed those who have tortured the believing men and the believing women, and then have not repented, will have the punishment of the hellfire, and they will have the punishment of the burning fire, al-hariq, another name for a blazing fire in Jahannam. One of the things you notice in this verse is the overpouring mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Regardless of what they were doing, it was a horrible, horrible thing. One of the most horrible things you could possibly imagine. But when he says that indeed those who have tortured the believing men and believing women, they were throwing them into the fire, making them turn away from Islam. And then he says, ثُمَّ لَمْ يَتُوبُوا. But then they did not repent after that. They didn't turn back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after that. Meaning what? Had they really been sorry for what they did, had they turned back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what they did, it is in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to even forgive them for something like this. Right? It is in the power of Allah Azza wa Jal. Even though they may have to face the consequences in this dunya, at least in the akhirah, at least in the hereafter, it is in the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive something even as big as this, if they turn back to Him subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this shows you the power and the overpouring mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. And just to put in comparison our lives, alhamdulillah, we don't engage in sins that are probably near something like this, right? Burning people alive because they believe in Allah Azza wa Jal. Right? That's a horrible, horrible thing to do. But if these people would have turned back to Allah Azza wa Jal, they might have faced their consequences in the dunya, but at least in the akhirah, these are things that are not outside the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal. If He wants to forgive, He will forgive. Allah Azza wa Jal says in Surah An-Nisa, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَغْفِرُ أَنْ يُشْرَكَ بِهِ وَيَغْفِرُ مَا دُونَ ذَلِكَ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. That Allah will never forgive that you worship others besides Him, that you associate partners with Him. But besides that, He can forgive whatever He wants for whoever He wills. And so this shows you the overpouring mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Granted that we turn back to Him. Right? And we know that tawbah has requirements, tawbah has certain ingredients to it. Right? So the first thing that the scholars say is that to turn back to Allah Azza wa Jal, you have to have genuine regret in your heart that what you did was wrong. You have to genuinely inside of you accept that what you did was wrong. Then you make tawbah, you seek Allah's forgiveness. If it involves the right of somebody else, you return that right to them. And you make a determination to never return to that sin again. Right? You make a strong determination that I'm not going to go back and do the same thing that I did again. Right? And the scholars have said, even if you fall into it again, you repeat the same process. But the determination has to be there that I will stay away from this. And this is tawbah. Right? This is tawbah when you actually feel the regret. When you go out of your way, you do something good, you follow up a bad deed with a good deed, and then you make a determination, or you have this commitment to not go back and do the same thing over and over again. But Allah Azza wa Jal is merciful, and we know that, but still, then, since they didn't repent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala prepared for them a severe punishment, and He mentions Jahannam, which is in the hereafter, obviously the hellfire, and Al-Hariq, and some of the scholars are different whether the punishment of Al-Hariq is in this dunya or the hereafter. So the majority of the scholars, they are saying that this is an emphasis, a specific type of punishment, again for these people, or they will, these are a group of people that will also be in this Al-Hariq, which is a blazing fire within the hellfire. Some of them said this was a punishment that happened in this world. Not a very strong narration. Some of the scholars, or some of the narrations mentioned that after they had burned these people, the fire got out of control, and it overtook even the people that were sitting there and witnessing and watching. So this is a narration that exists. Allahu a'lam whether it's authentic. Another possibility is that this could be a punishment also in the grave. The punishment between the two lives, which is the life of this world and the life of the hereafter. And we know this because Allah Azza wa Jalla, He mentions about Fir'aun. He says, النَّارُ يُعْرَضُونَ عَلَيْهَا غُدُوًّا وَعَشِيًّا وَيَوْمَ تَقُومُ السَّاعَةُ أَدْخِلُوا آلَ فِرْعَوْنَ أَشَدَّ الْعَذَابِ. And this is the ayah the scholars use to establish that the truth of the punishment of the grave, meaning that there will be rewards and punishments even in the grave. And this ayah says that the fire, meaning it's referring to Fir'aun, the fire, they are exposed to it morning and evening, and the day the hour appears, it will be said, make the people of Fir'aun enter the severest punishment, even something worse than this. So we know that Fir'aun was not killed by a fire, he was killed by drowning. So this means he's being punished, him and his people, in the grave with a fire. Right? And then in the hereafter, they will be thrown into the hellfire as well. So this is, again, another possibility that this punishment could have been, could be for them in the grave. But most of the Mufassirin, they say these are both referring to the hereafter. And then Allah Azza wa Jalla, after mentioning the fate of the disbelievers or the oppressors who oppressed the believers, He mentions the fate of the believers, right? Specifically those in the context, those who put up with that kind of fitna, that kind of torture. Allah says, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ لَهُمْ جَنَّاتٌ تَجْرِي مِنْ تَحْتِهَا الْأَنْهَارُ ذَلِكَ الْفَوْزُ الْكَبِيرُ. That indeed those who have believed and done righteous deeds will have gardens beneath which rivers flow, or through which rivers flow. That is the great attainment, right? So again, this is a pattern we have in the Quran, that when Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions the people of the hellfire and their punishment, He will mention the people of Jannah and their reward, or the opposite. When He mentions ayat of anger or something strict, He'll mention ayat of rahmah and mercy after that as well. This is a pattern that exists in the Quran. But here Allah Azza wa Jalla, again, the context, even though it's in the story, now it's starting to become more and more general. Because the whole purpose of the surah is to console the believers with the Prophet ﷺ, with what they're dealing with now, and that it's going to get worse for them. Right? The trials are going to get worse for them. So here is a lesson from the people before you. This is what they put up with. And here's what you get if you put up with patience with the trials and tribulations that you will face. And he mentions two qualities that are mentioned oftentimes together in the Quran. More often than not, that is Iman and Amal as-Salih, or Al-A'mal as-Salih, right? Iman, which we refer to as faith, and Al-A'mal as-Salih, the deeds which are considered Salih, or righteous, right, or good. And what we have to understand about Iman is we translate the word Iman into faith, and it loses a lot of its meaning when we translate that into the English word faith. Because the English word faith has a lot to do with just the heart, right? As long as you have faith in your heart or so on. We refer to the word faith as something that is a belief or a deep-rooted idea that you absolutely believe in that cannot be shaken. But the word Iman in the Islamic terminology refers to three different things. There's three different things the scholars have mentioned. It's in the Arabic they say تصديق بالجنان والقول باللسان والعمل بالأركان. That Iman is belief in the heart, unshakable belief, a commitment in the heart, verbal declaration, meaning something that you pronounce with your tongue as well, right? You make it, and we have the Shahadatain as part of becoming becoming Muslim. We say the Shahadatain, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it's also the physical performance of deeds, meaning that your body has to be involved in it as well. So Iman is more than just a belief that exists in your heart. It's a belief that exists in your heart. It manifests itself in the things you say and the things that you do. This is what Iman refers to, not just that, oh, I believe in Allah and I believe in the Messenger. There's an obedience that comes with it. And then that obedience, that demonstration with your tongue, or that demonstration, the performance of deeds with your limbs and with your body, those determine in a certain way if they're done, those are a'mal salihah. Those are considered good righteous deeds. And so good righteous deeds have two components to them as well, as the scholars they define them. A good and righteous deed is a deed that is sincere and a deed that is correct. Right? It has to be sincere and it has to be correct. Sincere meaning it's done for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jalla alone, or for the purpose that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mandated it to be done. And correct means it's done in accordance with the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is what is considered a good, righteous, salih deed. Right? It has to be sincere and it has to be correct. So an example of this is if a correct way for performing salah. If you perform salah with all of the arkan, the foundations, with all of the obligations, you do everything the right way, you say everything that you're supposed to say, you've performed it correctly. But if you're not sincere in your salah, if you're not praying for the sake of Allah, if you're just praying to show off and so on and so forth, then it's not accepted. Why? Because even if it's correct, it's not sincere, therefore it's not accepted. And if it's a deed is sincere but it's not correct, it may not be accepted, depending on the circumstances of the individual and how much they know. But if it's sincere but not performed correctly, it may not be corrected, right? And if a person does not make any effort to learn how to do things correctly, or how to, what the Quran says, what the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ says, if we don't make that effort, then if it's sincere and incorrect, then it will not be accepted, right? We're responsible for learning the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the Prophet ﷺ and all of the companions, they work so hard to make sure, and our scholars, they work so hard to preserve this for us. It's a duty on us to go and learn, especially that we have al-furud al-ayniyah, that the individual obligations, every single one of us has to know how to pray, what breaks our prayer, what breaks our fasting, how to perform hajj when it's time to perform hajj, how to give the zakat, what are the basics of our aqidah, our faith, and so on and so forth. All of these are mandatory for us to know. So we're not excused in that sense if it's sincere but it's not correct, right? But more detailed things, some things you may not be aware of, some things most people don't understand. The details of zakat, for example, and the details of hajj, very rare cases that happen. If you were sincere and it wasn't correct, then Allah Azza wa Jalla is forgiving. But for things that are obligatory upon us to know, the deeds have to be sincere, the deeds have to be correct. And this is what's called a'mal salihah. And we'll close with this, the final thing where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions that for these people, there are jannatun tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, that there are gardens through which rivers will flow. Right? And sometimes we get confused, it says gardens beneath which rivers will flow. It doesn't mean that you will have a garden and then underground there will be rivers, right? It's just a way to refer to the trees, the palaces, and through these gardens on the ground there will be rivers flowing through them of milk and honey and different types of things that have been mentioned in the Quran as well. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ties in Jannat, right? That ties in paradise with number one, having Iman, which is more than just an idea that exists in your heart, and with righteous good deeds. Right? So there's a lot of responsibility that we have to fulfill in order to get the paradise, as one of my teachers used to say, paradise is not cheap, right? People just generally think that Jannah is something easy or something cheap, right? There's a hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that mentions that I believe it was during the Isra and Miraj, that he saw that paradise, I may be wrong about the reference here, but he saw that paradise was surrounded by trials and difficulties, right? And that if people would not want to go down this path if they knew the trials and difficulties that existed around paradise, but then he saw the hellfire and that it was surrounded with ease and desires and fulfillments of one's wants and desires and so on and so forth, that people would easily take that path and then they might end up in hellfire because the path is so easy. So paradise is not something cheap. It comes with iman, that again we said it's belief in the heart, verbal declaration is the things you say, and the physical performance of your deeds, and those deeds that you perform, they have to be sincere and they have to be correct. So there is a lot of responsibility on the Muslim to properly perform, right? To properly perform as a Muslim and to properly behave as a Muslim to get the Jannah. And this is again something that Allah Azza wa Jalla in the surah is telling us. It's trials are something that come to the believers. Difficulties are some things that come to the believers. And iman and good deeds is all tied in with the fact that you have to deal with difficulties and trials and tribulations. In the beginning of Surah Al-Ankabut, Allah Azza wa Jalla makes that very, 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 very clear in where He says, أَفَحَسِبَ النَّاسُ وَيُتْرَكُوا أَن يَقُولُوا آمَنَّا وَهُمْ لَا يُفْتَنُونَ. That do people think that they will be left alone because they say we have iman and that they will not be put to fitna? And again, the word fitna in and of itself is a process that you take gold, you burn it, right, to get the pure substance. So you take something, a metal, and you put it in the furnace and it burns off the impurities and then you take it out. So this process that you go through of trials and tribulations, but it purifies you, right? It makes you stronger, it makes you better. But Allah Azza wa Jalla says, do they think just because they say we have iman, that they will not be tested? وَلَقَدْ فَتَنَّ الَّذِينَ مِنْ قَبْلِهِمْ فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا وَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ. That Allah Azza wa Jalla has definitely tested those. There's a lot of emphasis in this ayah. Allah has surely, definitely tested those that came before you, and He will surely test you as well, so He can know who are truthful, فَلَيَعْلَمَنَّ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا, who are really, really honest in their claim that they have iman, وَيَعْلَمَنَّ الْكَاذِبِينَ, and that He really, really knows who are the ones that are just lying, right? And Allah Azza wa Jalla does this because to make us realize whether or not we are true in our iman, in our faith. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to grant us patience and iman and good deeds, especially in times when we're going through difficulties. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla for His mercy and forgiveness. And if He can forgive somebody that would do something so horrible that would turn back to Him sincerely, He would forgive them. Then we make tawbah. We need to have regret in our hearts for the things that we have done. Sincerely turn back to Allah Azza wa Jalla and have the faith, that have the iman that Allah Azza wa Jalla is going to forgive us for our sins. And we'll stop here, inshallah. We'll continue with the surah next week, inshallah. If there are any questions or comments, we'll take them.
Just a reminder, I think the hadith you went to quote was the hadith of the Malak al-Jibril. When Allah created the...
Yes, that's the correct reference. Yeah. It was the angel that mentioned these things. That paradise was
Allah told him to go and look at it and tell him what he felt about it.
Yes.
He said, nobody will care about it or want to enter it. Allah said, go and look at it again. But when the Jannah was surrounded with trials and difficulties. So, and the same with the hellfire. Nobody heard about this, but they didn't want to enter it. And Allah, go and look at it again. It's like the wind and desires and stuff like that. So I think that's how they do it. So.
It was the angel Jibril that was mentioning those things.
And maybe there are a few things I thought about when you were given the class. One of it is one of the sciences of the Quran. The scholars have explained when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses His names and attributes in the Quran, it's not haphazard, you understand. So we look at the surah when it said Azizul Hamid, He's Aziz and he's a Hamid, like you said. Allah He has the power, to deal with the people if He wanted to deal with the people, and He left them alone. And He's a Hamid, you can't stop the peace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said the only reason why they're being persecuted is because they believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You understand? And if you look at it, at least we all married here, alhamdulillah. One of the ayats when I'm reciting the Quran in Surah Nisa, when Allah talks about placing the man, their darajat above the women, if you look at it, he says, Azizul Hakim. He's Aziz over the man.
We'll agree with this.
You understand? He's Aziz over the man.
Yes.
At the same time, the woman is Hakim, he's Hakim in making the husband the leader of the house, or you understand? So if we, and the scholars have explained, you know, and if we look at how Allah uses His names, you know, in the Quran, you know, we'll think deeply and we'll see the power, you know, of the Quran. You understand? Yeah. And when we listen to surahs like this, ayats like this, you know, though it might be specific, but at the same time, you know, it's general. So how does it, you know, apply to us today? Yeah. How can we take benefit from it? You understand? And like you rightly said, yes, whether we like it or not, if we truly believe, Allah is going to test us. Yeah. You know, and Allah He's Shaheed over everything. He's a witness over everything. Yeah. So whatever you're going through, Allah is not unjust to you. He knows. You understand? He sees. If somebody's been unjust to you, He sees. You know, and maybe that trial, you know, is what is best for you, whether you realize it or not. No. You understand? You might look at it down the road and say, oh, alhamdulillah, I went through that. If I didn't go through that, maybe I would have been arrogant upon the land. Well, Allah did that to me and made me, you know, humble. You understand? So, you know, there are a lot of benefits, because, like, you know, like I said, I was just thinking, you know, when you were reciting the verses and when you were talking, you understand, and you know, giving advice and nasiha to the people, you know, whether they're going to like you or not. In most cases, when you give people nasiha, they're not going to like you anyway, because the way the soul is, except very, very few people, the way the soul is, it wants to be praised, and that's what the Prophet Islam has told us, not to praise people to their face. Whoever does that, throw dirt into his face, because the nafs, it likes things like that. You understand? But when you correct people, although we should do it in a nice way, people don't really, you know, like it. Yeah. Oh, brother, what you did, you know, alhamdulillah, they really don't like it. People might talk bad about you, they might say this and that. But if you do it sincerely for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, alhamdulillah, your reward is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's our own way, whether we realize it or not, it's our own little quota in protecting the deen. You understand? In protecting the deen. I was going to tell you this, you know, for some time now, and today it happened again. I was like, inshallah, maybe I'll talk to you that some brothers have, they've actually talked about this in the masjid, that maybe there should be classes, maybe on fiqh, you know. Today, my brother was went to catch in ruku, he ran into the south. You know, people do it almost on a daily basis. Yeah. They run. You're not supposed to run. You know, the hadith is clear. You understand? The other day, I missed a rakah or so. A brother came into the masjid. He prayed right beside me. I don't know, I can't remember who led the salah. But he didn't catch the ruku. He made his own ruku. But the imam had already gotten up from ruku. Maybe he was getting up from ruku, he made ruku. He didn't catch the rakah. But he finished praying before I did, and he left the masjid. You know, and he didn't pay back that rakah. Mm-hmm. And I see this, you know, from time to time. People praying. You
might have forgotten too. People forget sometimes.
Yes, but you know, sometimes you know, sometimes you know, and the way people pray sometimes. The point is, if there are classes, you understand. If there are classes, sometimes do as if you're being personal. You read the hadith, you read the statements of the scholars. Then people would learn them and ask questions. Yeah. You know, people pray, the aura has been exposed. You know, they make sujood, they make ruku, the aura has been exposed. Things like this, you know, little things, but that are very, very important, that people seem not to maybe know or care about. Like for instance, you know, our brother, you know, I've been wanting to tell him, he also gives the masjid on time. He finishes his salah, the five prayer, almost immediately he gets up to pray his sunnah on the same spot. But the hadith is clear that you separate it. Even with your cap, you're separating the five salah from the sunnah, and you shouldn't pray in the same spot unless you talk to somebody or you move to another spot. The hadith is clear, and the scholars they've explained. So these things are very, very little, fundamental things. It's not difficult to implement these things, but if people don't know about it, or they're not reminded about it, then what's going to happen? You did it for years and years and years and years, and so it's just my own.
And this is the importance of why every individual Muslim has a responsibility to learn, because again, even if you offer classes, they have the responsibility to show up. Right, is what it is, or but every individual Muslim has a responsibility to know how to perform the basic acts of their worship. What are the obligations? What are the things that will break your prayer? What are the things? So, like exposing of the awrah, it is unfortunately sometimes common. People's shirts will go up or their pants will go down right when they're going into sujood and things. This exposes the awrah, and that is a condition of the prayer. Right? Before you start the prayer, you have to make sure that your awrah is. So these are, but it's every individual Muslim's obligation. And I think the most we can do is at least remind them that, hey, this is happening, this, take care of this is your salah, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, certain things are not excusable. And so when it comes to salah, it's an obligation, it's one of the 5 pillars of Islam, you are not excused for not learning how to do it correctly. Right? So you have to, like we said, the deeds have to be sincere, they have to be correct, it's a responsibility. So if you're praying, you should know, it is, Allah is not going to excuse, Allah knows best, but He's not going to excuse based on what we understand, that, why didn't you learn, right? And Allah mentioned this about the hijrah, or migration, or moving away from the land, right? أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً. Isn't the earth of Allah wide? If you couldn't worship here, couldn't you go something like this, right? And then obviously for things that are daily requirements for us to do, these are individual obligations. And alhamdulillah, we can do maybe a better job of reminding people of what they need to know, and then they can go but it's their responsibility to go and learn these things. But Jazakallah khair, like we mentioned, it's very important to understand Amal Salih is sincere and correct. Right? Those 2 things are very, very important, and you can't separate the 2. Otherwise, this is where we get into innovation, or this is where we get into desires. Right? So you do whatever you want, however you want it, and so on and so forth. Whereas the name of the game is Islam, which is submission. Right? It's giving up your will and giving into the will of Allah. Jazakallah khair.
I think this is a really good point and also important. However, if you do it like in a fiqh class, very few people will show up, people who are interested, or few people who have time. The problem, I see this with the masses. That's why I think it's good to have this like in a Jumu'ah khutbah sometime. To do like adab salat. Example that the brother say, other example that I see, you are praying, somebody is sitting in front of you. Sometimes I see somebody sitting looking there and somebody praying to him. This is very, very grave actually. It's really. Sometimes people are talking during khutbah of Jumu'ah.
Yes, that's a big thing.
Like I told you, in Morocco, for instance, we have these Madhab Maliki. If you go to Morocco, before the Imam start the khutbah, after the adhan, they always mention hadith that says, if you say to somebody who's sitting close to you, if you say to them, just listen, your Jumu'ah is gone.
It's gone.
It's useless. So they always remind people with this hadith to make sure, and the last Jumu'ah I told it to some kids over there. I told them, after the adhan and the Jumu'ah, it's like prayer. When the Imam starts the khutbah, it's like you are in prayer. You don't talk,
Yeah. No, this is true. We do give this khutbah every now and then, but again, like we said, it's there are this is not excusable, right? There's plenty of resources, and people need to be made aware that this is your obligation to know how to do this. And we definitely do. It's a responsibility to address this in the khutbah, but I cannot impress enough that people themselves are not excused. They have, if they can't come to the masjid for a halaqah, they have books, they have online lessons, they have other things they can listen to. We, alhamdulillah, we are not in poverty when it comes to knowledge about Islam and the foundations of our knowledge and so on and so forth, right? And Allah Azza wa Jalla, alhamdulillah, has not taken away ilm, has not taken away this knowledge. So every single person is responsible, right? They're not excused for not knowing these things. And we have to remind them, you have to go, you have to learn, that's what the previous khutbah was about, was continuously seeking knowledge, and especially religious knowledge, as the Prophet ﷺ said, right? Man salaka tariqan yaltamisu fihi ilma, sahhala Allahu lahu bihi tariqan ila al-jannah. Whoever treads any path, a path seeking knowledge of Islam, then Allah will make easy for him a path to Jannah. So if people just do this, what are my obligations? What am I supposed to believe? What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to do it right? This is something that takes a while, right? This is not, it's not something you can do in a weekend course. It takes, it's study, it's reminding yourself. You can forget certain things, reviewing this knowledge. Even that in and of itself, alhamdulillah, Allah Azza wa Jal can make a path easy to Jannah if people, the general people just do this. So again, it's very, very important. Alhamdulillah, we can do our best to remind. And may Allah Azza wa Jal really put it in our hearts to keep refreshing our knowledge and going back and doing what is right, inshallah. جزاكم الله خير. قولوا قولي هذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. جزاكم الله خير.
جزاك الله خير. وإياك يا شيخ.